privilege to be here with you. Thank you very much. My name is Iъn Macdonald. I am a science fiction writer, a little bit of horror, occasionally fantasy. I live near Belfast in Northern Ireland. I have been writing for 40 years. 40 years, would you believe it? 40 years. And I'm here to talk to you about time. Time and things you don't want to think about. Like death. Time and death. We don't think about time right. We don't really understand how time works. We all have an idea of time before we were born, but we didn't exist then. There was no us then. We were effectively dead. We didn't exist before we were born. But we understand that there was a past, that there were, knights in armor, that there were pirates, that there were things like that there were ice ages, and that there were dinosaurs way before us. But we understand the idea of time before we were alive, before we existed. But we find it very, very hard to think of time after we cease to exist. And I've bad news for you, we're all going to cease to exist someday. We don't want to think about it, but it's true. But time will go on without us. The future will stretch out, for uncountable gazillions of years after we are gone. We are but a brief flicker of life in the vastness of time. And then maybe after that the universe will start again. But we are a long time dead, but we have a great difficulty of thinking of a time when we are not. And I think maybe that's to do with the idea that we don't like the idea of being dead. We don't like the idea of people having fun without us. That exciting things will happen and we won't be there. And that's not a fun thing to think about. But I think we do need to think about it. I think we need to think about our relationship to time. Because we live in a world with lots of problems. We have political problems, we have ecological problems, we have resource problems. And these problems are often things that stretch. I think I smoked, wouldn't you? Often things that stretch beyond our lifetimes. These are long-term solutions that we need to find. But we don't know how to think that way. We think in terms of short-term solutions. The way our stock markets work, the way that capitalism works, it is short-term solutions because we can't think about long-term solutions because there may not be a profit in that, because the cycle of capitalism is geared towards short-termism. Likewise, our political cycles, we find it very hard in Western democracies to come up with long-term solutions because they're usually painful, and also they will outlive the life of any government that proposes them. So long-term solutions are hard to find as well. I mean, I used to work in television for many years. I worked in television, and the thing we found is you work with what are known as commissioning editors in broadcasters. And I worked with the same company for a long time. But commissioning editors come and go all the time. And the first thing a new commissioning editor does when they arrive is they decommission everything that their predecessor did. Short-term thinking. So we have television programs greenlit. A new editor comes in, they decommission all our shows. This happens because it's short-term thinking. We don't do long-term thinking very well. But I would argue that we need to, and we need to think about time in a different way. And that will kind of, for me, I found that very helpful as a science fiction writer because it enables me to see my part in that far-off future and how I connect to that future. Maybe, where we are wearing our spirit across the solar system, maybe where we live in ecological harmony with our planet, maybe all of these things all together. I can see how my life lived now in 2024 connects to that future. So I'll tell you how this came about. I was Googling, and I will need to look this up on my phone for the details. Years back I was Googling something and I came across a piece of music by an American composer called John Cage. Now the bit that everyone knows from John Cage is 4 minutes 34 seconds, which is 4 minutes and 34 seconds of somebody not playing something. It's not silence, it's somebody not playing an instrument, which is a different thing altogether. That's the one everyone knows. That's like John Cage's greatest hit. 4 minutes 34 seconds of silence. But he also has a piece called As Slowly as Possible, which is written without a time signature or basically bars, and it can be played as quickly or as slowly as you like. It's written for keyboard, it's written for organ, and most performances of As Slowly as Possible take 70 minutes, between 20 or 70 minutes, depending basically on how bored the audience gets. You're bored already, aren't you? You really hate the idea of this. Anyway, as slowly as possible. But in Germany, anyone from Germany here? Anyone from Germany? Anyone been to Germany? In the middle of Germany, this is weird because my sister-in-law lives there now. In the middle of Germany, there's a small town called Halberstadt. There's this beautiful old abandoned church. I have to look the name up. What's it called? It is called. No, go away. Stop doing that. Always. The Church of Saint something. Anyway, a lovely old church. Just because I'm going to try to find this again. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Okay, you make one mistake and it chucks you right out of the Church of Saint Bucardi. Not Bacardi, which is rum, but Saint Bucardi, who was a saint in Halberstadt in Germany. And the good people of Halberstadt, who are clearly people who have far too much time on their hands, decide to take the title of the piece of music literally. Okay, we will play it as slowly as possible. So in this beautiful abandoned church, they built an organ. And it basically plays automatically. A pump pumps air through an organ pipe, and they hang a weight on the key so the key stays pressed down so the note sounds continuously. And with their time signature, it started 23 years ago, and it will end in the year 2640. This piece of music will come to an end. You can hear it online. Go and search for As Slowly as Possible in Halberstadt, and what they do is they build bits of the organ because they know when the next note's going to arrive, so they add the bits to the organ or take bits away from the organ as they need to do it. But it will play continuously for 600 years, this piece of music, before it's finished. And you can hear it, as I said, you can hear it on, it's got this live stream. It's not very interesting, it's not what happens, but you can hear what they're doing. And the next note, hang on, I need to look this up actually because of the detail. Yeah, it's been played for 23 years, 2 weeks and 1 day. And the last note was played on the 5th of February this year, and the next note is due on August the 5th, 2026. So the next note is due in as slowly as possible. In fact, for the first 5 years, because of the music store's arrest, there was total silence for the first 5 years, and nothing happened. It is kind of a funny idea, but it's a very profound idea as well. And to me, it kind of resonated. I find it a slightly spooky idea that, I live my life out, and still that music hasn't even started properly yet. it. It's still tuning up. It's still in its opening phrases. And I find it kind of very positive as well, because there's a commitment from the people in Halberstadt. There are people all around the world who turn up, who fly in to go and note change on this organ. But it's the commitment that there will be people for 600 years who are committed to making this piece of music play. And I find that kind of very positive. It's a vote in favour of people. There's an even longer piece of music called Long Player, which is happening in England, in London, composed by, you know, the Irish folk band The Pogues? Yeah. One of the Pogues composed it. It's a piece of music being played on Tibetan singing bowls. And this is run by computers on Tibetan singing bowls. It's a piece of music that will evolve for 1,000 years and never repeat itself once. It's a constantly evolving piece of music that will play for 1,000 years. It's called Long Player. There are places in London, there's like an old lighthouse you can go to and you can hear Long Player playing. Yet again, it's a commitment to the future that there will be people there. You know, 1,000 years from now. Yeah, it ends in 2999. And that's a thought, and that's about the thought, you know, that, you know, empires rise and fall, nations collapse, that music keeps playing. And I kind of stole this idea shamelessly, because that's what writers do. We steal things shamelessly. From my most recent novel, Hopeland, it's about a family that basically connects across space. It's all about connections. You can move through this family forever and never come to the end of it. What happens when this family meets another family of musicians who control time, and they have their own piece of music called The Music? How imaginative. A water-powered, basic music machine that does this, that will play for 1,000 years. And it's what happens when human connection meets this deep commitment to time. And these, if I'm in danger of running out of material, I will start party games, by the way, so you've been warned. These kind of, the idea of these immensely long projects and people's commitment to them kind of made me look further into the idea of long time. And I came across an American organization. I was going to say I'm a member, but actually I've got to pay my membership this year. Called the Long Now Foundation. Has anyone heard of the Long Now Foundation? Yeah, good. Any members of the Long Now Foundation? I would put my hand up, but I'm not because my membership lapsed. The Long Now Foundation was founded. One of the founders was the musician Brian Eno. Used to do rocks. Shows how old I am. Used to do Roxy music back in the day. But he's one of the founders of the Long Now Foundation. It's based in San Francisco in an old fort, which is which have people stroking white cats in there. That's a secret missile base. Super fast secret jets and all that. But no, they're based in an old fort in San Francisco. But what they, Neil. American science fiction. Neil Stevenson, thank you. Neil Stevenson is also a member. Cory Doctorow was a member. It attracts science fiction writers. But what they are about is basically trying to get people to think long term rather than short term, to commit to long term projects. They use the 10,000 year calendar. We use the 1,000-year calendar. Every 1,000 years it clicks onto a new number, first number. We use the 10,000-year calendar. So this is the year 02024 of the 10,000-year calendar. It'll be a long time if we get to 9999. I think it's 5 nines, 99999. But that's just a way of thinking about we think in terms of years, we think in terms of decades. We think in terms of centuries and think that's a long time. No, they want to think in terms of thousands of years or tens of thousands of years. And one of the ideas I took from the Long Now Foundation for the Hope Done project was they're interested in various long-term ideas, one of which is like long-term institutions, which are institutions. Institutions with massive stability that have either lasted for a long time or will last for a long time. And they tried to look at them, and the only one they found was the Catholic Church. There may be others now. You may or may not agree with Catholicism, but it's been there for a long time. It's very, very stable. Things are changing, and but they're looking for basically mechanisms like Catholicism that can transmit information down the centuries in case something terrible happens. There's a writer, British philosopher and writer. I don't necessarily agree with everything he says, but a guy called William McCaskill, who wrote a book called What We Owe the Future. And he's quite closely allied in some ways to the Long Now Foundation's thinking about long-term thinking. But his argument is that as we have inherited what previous generations, who we didn't know, because they're not here anymore and we are, as we've inherited that from them, we need to think about what we leave to the generations who come after us. Not just our own families, but maybe generations 100, 300, 500, 1,000 years down the line. What can we leave them? How can we, because their lives matter, because their lives will matter. For us just to think that only our lives and our generations and our families matter is small, short-term thinking. He wants us to think about what do we owe these future, yet-to-be-born generations? Who will come to pass? And one of his, which is why the whole idea of long-term institutions that can pass knowledge reliably down, that has archives of material, that has a structure that will be recognized in 1,000 years' time, are important for that passing that continuity on to our future generations. And he has interesting ideas, like you hear a lot of people saying, burn all the oil. You know, let's make as much money as we can, let's burn all the oil. He says, no, don't do that. Leave some, or leave oil in the ground. Because if civilization collapses, if the meteor hits us, if we have all-out nuclear war, if some catastrophe takes humanity to the edge, if we face an extinction event and survive it, if we have no oil or coal or carbon-based fuels, it's going to be very, very difficult to rebuild a society. We will be stuck, basically, at a kind of, basically at the level of the 18th century, possibly for all time. Now, I personally love the 18th century, but we won't have any easy fuel to use to get. Yes, we won't have an easy fuel to use like oil to get us to the point where we don't need to use oil anymore. There will be that gap, that technology gap that we can't get past because we don't have the resources. Long-term thinking, what do we owe future generations? This is one of the, this interests me. In the Hopeland project, I'm interested in the idea of social institutions that can last maybe for 10,000 years. What kind of social institution can last for 10? Can any human institution last that long? But it's an interesting question to ask. And if we say nothing can, well, doesn't that say something about our limitations as human beings? Now, one of the big projects of the Long Now Foundation, we can do this, it's very rock and roll. The clock of the long now. This is a real thing. It's now, a lot of these long now people are kind of tech bros, and they have money, and maybe they should be spending the money on something more sensible than a clock. But the idea kind of catches the imagination. The clock of the long now is a clock that ticks once a year, that chimes once a century, and every 1,000 years the hour hand moves on, and it's designed to run for 10,000 years. The 10,000-year clock of the long now. And they're building it inside a mountain in Texas. What? Yeah, they're building. They've been a long time raising money for it. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. But the idea kind of catches at the imagination that they're building this clock that will run for 10,000 years inside a mountain in Texas. And how are they going to power it? How are they going to power this clock? There's no guarantee that any technology we have now will be there in the future. Climate change may mean that things like wind power or water power may fail. How do you power a clock for 10,000 years? And their answer is human power. That every year, volunteers, people who pass the story down, who are aware of the clock of the long now, will gather and wind the clock up inside the mountain. This is the most metal thing, isn't it? And yet again, it's about confidence in the future. It's about confidence in human beings that we will be there to do that, and that we will remember that there is this clock inside a mountain in Texas, and that it will take human beings to wind it up, to go to it, visit it, and wind it up every year. It's saying that there will be people there to do it. I find that very positive. I'm running out of material here, guys. What time is it?
Just about 5 minutes for questions.
Excellent, yeah. Also the Long Now Foundation has the best membership card. It's like this size, but it's made from titanium. It's really thin. You can use it like a shuriken, like a Japanese throwing star. Fantastic thing. And it's designed to be like that, so it will last for 1,000 years. Yeah, so I will be long dead, and I will be dust in my coffin, but my membership card will still be there. I find that reassuring. But what I'm hoping to try and give you the feel of is that we have an idea of what we call deep time, that time behind us, when the age of the dinosaurs. Now deep time is deep, very, very deep indeed. But at least we have some idea of it. But what the Long Now Foundation wants to do is try to get you to think about the future in the same way, and that our actions today have consequences in the future. That we are not short-term beings, that there are long projects that involve commitment from human beings, that involve thinking of a long-term future, thinking that and that positivity, that kind of human beings will be there to do it. I find it a very positive way of thinking here in the year 02024. But anyway, I'm out of material. I'm out of material. Any thoughts, questions, observations? Is there a microphone in the room, or shall I run around? Oh, man with radio mic. It's on. Don't press any buttons, okay? Any question, or are you just so wowed with this that you're going, oh, my mind is glowing? You switched it off. You switched it off again, haven't you?
Okay.
Hey. Okay, I can hear you. Can everyone else hear you?
Yeah. 10,000 years is a nice measure, but if we take that measure, 10,000 years, let's say that there are 20,000 years, 30,000 years, do you think that in 50,000 years, human beings will be quite the same in order to be interested?
Yes.
What we are?
Exactly. I think the thing about the long now thinking is that we can grasp 10,000 years in the future. It's a stretch, but we can emotionally connect to it. Whereas something like 100,000 years, we find that very hard to emotionally connect to. But 10,000 years, okay, yeah, I can kind of imagine that. 50,000 years, even 10,000 years from now, even 1,000 years from now, I have no idea what humanity might be like. At the end of Hopeland, the book, since no spoiler, that doesn't matter, spoilers. At the end, the book ends in 2980, when the Brightborn music comes to an end, and people come from all across the solar system, and some are human, some are transhuman, some are something else. But they come from all across the solar system to hear the music end, and the music ends. And then this kid opens a sluice gate, and the water runs out, and the music starts again. Because I want it to be an ongoing thing, you know, that this way of thinking about the future never ends. What we will be, I don't know, but even 600 years from now, when the Halberstadt music finishes, I have no idea what we will be like. Will we be recognizable as humans? What will the world be like? But what the Halberstadt, slowly as possible piece is saying is that there will be someone or something there who knows what this is and wants it to continue, because they will have the same thoughts and values about time as the good people of Halberstadt do. So, yeah. And I said, and you can hear it. Yeah. It needs a drum set, yeah. It needs a drum and bass. Thank you very much. Question, gentleman in front. It's very rock and roll.
Yeah, beautiful. So, while talking about this, it kind of strikes me as a very static view of time and the human civilization. And this idea that these people, they play the same music, I mean, in hundreds and thousands of years, it smacks like quite Western and full of hubris that things will be the same, they'll be the same people. Isn't it better to embrace some cyclical view of time? You know, civilization, you know, rise, they fall, we learn this. Many things will come and disappear. They may be actually this long time something that is a process and not a static object that kind of these things out. Your card, you know, this clock, I mean, your thoughts about it?
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, it's the whole Indian Vedic cycle of time of the bird that chips away a bit of a mountain, and it's like billions of years to chip away at the mountain, and then another mountain of years when everything goes, and that's one astral Vedic year. Yeah. I think the thing is with it. Yes, we do tend to think of time in the West as a linear process, whereas in many Eastern philosophies it is a cyclical and circular process. I don't think that things like the clock of the long now go against that, because it's not measuring forward time, it's basically cycles of time, you know, a year, a decade, a century, 1,000 years, that these things cycle endlessly. Just because we have a long process going on doesn't mean we can't innovate around it. Of course we will innovate around it. Of course there will be new stuff coming through, and it's entirely possible that people will, you know, that the good people of Halberstadt, you know, 40 will go, fuck it, I'm bored with this kind of it's really boring, this. Or that something will happen, but it's in the same way as religions have long-term commitments. I think their thinking is that people will find their own commitment to this, and if they want to do it, then they will do it. But certainly, I certainly agree with you that the Western idea of endless progress through linear time is not necessarily a particularly good way to look at it. But at the same time, I think there's room for both approaches. That there are cycles, that there is circular time and there's linear time as well. That we do flow from the future into the past for all the good and ill that happens. Anyone else? Right.
Do you want to shout or do you want to use the microphone? Use the microphone.
I did my shouting earlier.
You did, yeah.
So I wonder, how do you feel about the concept of singularity, which seems diametrically opposed to the idea there is the concept that there's a point in time that's pretty soon, possibly after which we can't really transmit any sort of information that's relevant today because it's sort of semantic breakdown.
Yeah. I mean, this is the current spiral of technological singularity, isn't it? That sort of thing. Yeah. That I do think is a very Western way of looking at things, in that it's kind of a ever-accelerating progress up a timeline will bring us to a point where progress is so fast that nothing can be known about the future beyond a certain point. For me, the Kurzweil singularity sounds deeply, deeply boring. Even more boring than listening to a 600-year-long piece of organ music. Because when science fiction writers, and they're mostly, well, the ones I've read are mostly white Americans, and we're supposed to be solving wonderful, thrilling mathematical problems. I'm sorry, that sounds very, very boring to me. The thing is, though, that any informational singularity will contain all information that has preceded it. So in some way, things like long player and as slowly as possible will be folded into all the information that the information singularity civilization has. And in some ways they can continue virtually. It strikes me that, it's kind of, if I mention Descartesian dualism, will the room empty? That it's very much a Western Descartesian dualism between mind and body, spirit and body, information and and embodiment. At the moment, we have no way of knowing what a disembodied intelligence would look like. All our ideas of intelligence take place inside a physical body that can interact with the material universe in some way or other. What a disembodied intelligence might look like, we don't really know, because everything we do is shaped effectively in terms of it has some bearing on the physical world. I'm rambling here, stop me. For me, as a writer, singularity stories are really boring, because I want messy human beings, I want messy characters, I want emotions, I want heartbreak, and I want pain, and I want guilt. And there's no reason why any of that should exist inside the singularity where you're just doing very abstract mathematics. Or if they do they mean anything? What is the actual meaning of virtual existence? Anyway, we shall see. We don't know. Anyway, I'll be not dead. But my little card will survive. Anyone else? Gentleman on the back.
I love this. It's like open mic night.
So
You'll be MC?
in the explanation of your idea, you said that short-term goals are directly related to the ideas of the capitalistic thinking. And this is pretty obvious considering that, let's say, the capitalistic year is divided into quarters. You have your annual reports for economic reports and stuff like that. I think very often CEOs will fire their workers at the end of a quarter just to increase profits on the documents, which hurts the company in the long term, but in the short term shows them as a very successful company. And my idea is, aren't these projects that last for a ridiculously long amount of time also the product of capitalistic thinking, where one of the main mantras of capitalistic thinking is make it bigger. Like they do something, you have to make it bigger, and then we have to make it bigger, and then we have to make it bigger, and then
Grow.
Yes, but it's like with the movies. Oh, in the first movie he's going to fight a bad guy, then he's going to fight like 100 bad guys in the second one, then he's going to fight entire universe in the third one. And these projects that last for, let's say, let's make an uninspired and very boring piece of music that's going to last for 60 hours, and then someone says, oh no, let's make it 600 hours, and then the third guy says, no, it's going to be 600 years, and everyone has their mind blown, and everyone goes insane, and then let's make a clock, but 1 second it's 1 hour, no, 1 second it's going to be 1 year, it's going to take like 10,000 years for it to work, and this mantra of bigger is better does not help humanity absolutely anyway, and this cannot be considered long-term goals in the sense of the betterment of humanity. So are projects like this one just the other side of the same coin, short-term thinking?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Excellent contribution, sir. Thank you very much. Yes, the Long Now Foundation is tech bros with far too much money and not enough time. Myself included. Haven't got the money there. But yes, this is it. But I think where long-term thinking flies in the face of capitalism, and you are right, it's about, especially with the clock of the long now, it's like, let's build something really big. Let's put it inside a mountain because that's cool. But I think, I've lost my train of thought. It was brilliant, it was dazzling, it was full of insight, I forgot what it was. Yes, I think where long-term thinking goes against capitalism is the capitalist concept of creative destruction, as they call it, and that there are life cycles in terms of companies, that everything has to be, the whole, what they call the hype cycle, which is what AI is going through at the moment. That kind of capital has to break, take, reshape, build, and then collapse, and then move on to something else. Okay, in a sense, this is a kind of circular way of thinking about time, but also it's massively energy intensive and doesn't really care about anything beyond itself. Whereas for me, the whole thing about long-term thinking, you're thinking about people, you're thinking about living systems. I can't see any way of working with our environmental disaster at the moment except through long-term thinking, and governments are not geared up to do that because green policies, zero carbon policies are not popular and they will not get you elected. And that's the quandary that governments find themselves in. And this opens a disturbing thought that maybe the only possible successful green government is a totalitarianism, which is a disturbing thought, but maybe maybe it's the only way to get things done. But yes, I agree. Very good point. Yes, exactly. It is all scaling up and building bigger. I think the thing about long-term thinking is it's not necessarily against short-term thinking. It's as well as short-term thinking in that we think short-term by default. It's the way we react every day to things. Next year maybe we'll do this. 10 years from now maybe we'll do that. But what about lives? What about people and their experiences and worlds after we are gone. How are we doing for time? Am I out of time now? Am I out of time? You say yes. How was it?
Out of time.
Okay, one more question. One more question. Yes, gentlemen.
Thank you. I would like to be a bit of a contrarian to my friend over there.
Fight! Fight!
Outside. And I would like to propose that even though such big projects might be the fruits of labor of capitalism and that they might be wrong in their essence, we still might need such projects. I was wondering the question if you or anyone here has read the book A Canticle for Leibowitz.
Yes. Good call.
Yeah.
Good call.
That's another great book where the focus is on preservation of knowledge. This is also a big religious project, and it's also something very necessary. How do we preserve ourselves if we don't create something big, something grand? This may be capitalistic, but in order to create something long-term, it also sometimes needs to be bigger, because we equate the two. Big is often long, long is big, etc. So we might need such projects, even if we don't necessarily like them. And they might be the product of a wrong economic theory, or a strange economic theory, but they're still valuable in their own right. So what do you think about this in the context of the Leibowitz theory?
Yes.
Yeah, because we have something like that at the moment. Svalbard Seed Bank, which you may have heard of, which was to take seeds and genetic material from as many of Earth's, well, food crops first of all, but as many other plants as they can, store them in the permafrost under Svalbard in this amazing, sloping tunnel thing that goes deep into the permafrost. And this exists. This has been built, but there's a problem. Because of climate change, the permafrost is thawing out, and with it all the seeds in the seed bank, and they need to build a new one somewhere else where the permafrost will not thaw out. But that's the same. It's a similar sort of thing. It is preserving genetic information and genetic diversity, doing it now for the long term, in case something terrible happens. And I think some significant percentage of the seeds they have stored in the seed bank, maybe 1 to 2% of the plants are now extinct in the wild. The seed bank has them, and the same with knowledge. I think this is another one that it's a while. Here I am talking about the long math, and it's a while since I looked at their website. And I think one of their long-term projects as well is to preserve existing human knowledge in some way that will be accessible by cultures that may have that may have no technology, that may not be able to read them, that may not even speak the same languages, but how can we communicate that? A kind of the Encyclopedia Galactica is the foundation, isn't it, ultimately? It's long-term thinking. But this is, I said, it's, there are two sides to this, and I think too much we're told to concentrate on the short term and not think about the long term. Anyway, I just thought in case you hadn't heard of this, you might be interested, and it might give you some thinking about our place, our individual places in time, what we've come from, what we can pay forward to the future, and maybe any responsibilities we have, or maybe don't have, how to think bigger than ourselves. And to be honest, science fiction writers think, science fiction readers and writers, science fiction readers think big anyway. You are all big thinkers. Thank you for listening. That was my very brief introduction to